Greetings, Community Allies, and welcome to the week 3 of our Community Allies Vacation Bible School. This week's theme is sharing the world, and we will explore through some crafts and activities and readings what it means to share the world and who we share the world with and what we share the world with. First of all, our readings this week are two that we've already heard in week 1 and week 2. The first one is from the New Testament, the first letter of Peter, chapter 3, verse 8. Finally, all of you have unity of spirit, sympathy, love for one another, a tender heart, and a humble mind. And we talked that week about how understanding our own stories and then listening to the perspectives of others help us to have sympathy and connection with other people. Last week, our verse was from the Old Testament, the book of Micah. And the verse was chapter 6, verse 8. He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So we talked about how doing justice is like when we act out of love, and loving mercy is when we like to help people and we reach out to give people things that they might not be able to get for themselves. And to be humble is to do these things without seeking praise and attention for ourselves. And that's part of what it means to be an ally. An ally seeks to understand and make connection with people who are different from them. And they seek to act justly to help make changes in the world that will help people. And they seek to directly help people too, but mostly they stand by people who are struggling or suffering, and they don't call attention. The ally doesn't call attention to themselves. They help raise up the person who's struggling and their issue. So, who and what do we share the world with? I think if you look around, you can start to understand who is in the world with you. It's maybe the people in your family. It's the trees in your yard, the bugs in your garden. But then if you look off your street, you can see that it's people at St. Columba's. Maybe it's even people who live in a really different neighborhood than you in Washington, or who have a different skin color than you, or it's a forest in a country you've never been to before. Our story today is called Last Stop on Market Street. And we are going to hear about CJ and a journey that he takes with his grandma. Last Stop on Market Street. Words by Matt de la Peña. Pictures by Christian Robinson. For Luna and her two grandmas, Ronnie and Grace, M. de la Paix. For Nana, from CR. CJ pushed through the church doors, skipped down the steps. The outside air smelled like freedom, but it also smelled like rain, which freckled CJ's shirt and dripped down his nose. He ducked under his Nana's umbrella, saying, "How come we gotta wait for the bus in all this wet?" "Trees get thirsty too," his Nana told him. "Don't you see that big one drinking through a straw?" CJ looked for a long time, but never saw a straw. From the bus stop, he watched water pool on flower petals, watched rain patter against the windshield of a nearby car. His friend Colby climbed in, gave CJ a wave, and drove off with his dad. "Nana, how come we don't got a car?" "Boy, what do we need a car for? We got a bus that breathes fire and old Mr. Dennis, who always has a trick for you. The bus creaked to a stop in front of them. It sighed and sagged, and the doors swung open. "What's that I see?" Mr. Dennis asked. He pulled a coin from behind CJ's ear, placed it in his palm. Nana laughed her deep laugh and pushed CJ along. They sat right up front. The man across the way was tuning a guitar. An old woman with curlers had butterflies in a jar. Nana gave everyone a great big smile and a good afternoon. She made sure CJ did the same. The bus lurched forward and stopped, lurched forward and stopped. Nana hummed as she knit. "How come we always got to go here after church?" CJ said. "Miguel and Colby never have to go nowhere." "I feel sorry for those boys," she told him. "They'll never get a chance to meet Bobo or the sunglass man. And I hear Trixie got herself a brand new hat." CJ stared out the window, feeling sorry for himself. He watched cars zip by on either side, watched a group of boys hop curbs on bikes. A man climbed aboard with a spotted dog. CJ gave up his seat. "How come that man can't see?" "Boy, what do you know about seeing?" Nana told him. "Some people watch the world with their ears." "That's a fact. Their noses too," said the man, sniffing at the air. "That's a mighty fine perfume you're wearing today, ma'am." Nana squeezed the man's hand and laughed her deep laugh. Two older boys got on next. CJ watched as they moved on by and stood in back. "Sure wish I had one of those," he said. Nana set down her knitting. "What for? You got the real live thing sitting across from you. Why don't you ask the man if he'll play us a song?" CJ didn't have to. The guitar player was already plucking strings and beginning to sing. "To feel the magic of music," the blind man whispered. "I like to close my eyes." Nana closed hers too. So did CJ and the spotted dog. And in the darkness, the rhythm lifted CJ out of the bus, out of the busy city. He saw sunset colors swirling over crashing waves, saw a family of hawks slicing through the sky, saw the old woman's butterflies dancing free in the light of the moon. CJ's chest grew full, and he was lost in the sound, and the sound gave him the feeling of magic. CJ looked around as he stepped off the bus. Crumbling sidewalks and broken down doors, graffiti-tagged windows and boarded up stores. He reached for his Nana's hand. "How come it's always so dirty over here?" She smiled and pointed to the sky. "Sometimes when you're surrounded by dirt, CJ, you're a better witness for what's beautiful." CJ saw the perfect rainbow arcing over their soup kitchen. He wondered how his Nana always found beautiful where he never even thought to look. He looked all around them again, at the bus rounding the corner out of sight, and the broken street lamps still lit up bright, and the stray cat shadows moving across the wall. When he spotted their familiar faces in the window, he said, "I'm glad we came." He thought his Nana might laugh her deep laugh, but she didn't. She patted him on the head and told him, "Me too, CJ. Now come on." So that was our story. about CJ and all the things that his Nana helped him see from the bus. Were you surprised by the ending? Did you make any assumptions about who they were or where they were going? And were you surprised what they were doing at the very end? CJ certainly started to look at the world in different ways, didn't he? He wanted to ride in a car, but he realized how much more he saw by being on the bus. And he wanted an electronic device to listen to music, but there was a man on the bus there to play the guitar, and that was pretty fun. And he was even able to give up his quarter to the man. So this week, you guys are going to get to practice your observation skills. And you're going to go on a nature walk. And in your packet, there's some directions, and there's also a sheet that you can take notes on. You don't have to use that sheet, but it might be helpful. You might want to take a magnifying glass so that you can look at some things really closely. You might want to take a camera in case you want to take pictures of something. And you might want to take something to collect things in. Maybe you'll find some pretty flower petals or leaves or pebbles on the ground that you want to bring home. I also want you to try something. I want you to try while you're walking to just be quiet and not talk to the people that you're with for a few minutes. And as you walk along, notice 5 green things. 5 different things that are green. And you can remember this by holding up your hand. 5 green things you want to see. Then you want to listen for 4 sounds. What can you hear? Then you want to try and see if you can smell 3 different smells. And then see if you can feel 2 different things. Maybe you're walking in your backyard barefoot and you feel the grass, or maybe the sun is shining, or there's a breeze blowing. See what feels you can feel. And finally, see if you can taste one thing. And that might not be something you pick from outside. It might just be something that you taste in your mouth. You just notice that sometimes you go along all day and you don't even notice what your mouth tastes like. And so the last thing you do is notice your mouth. So you're going to use all 5 of your senses. First, you're going to look for 5 green things, listen for 4 sounds, sniff for 4 smells, feel for 2 feels, and notice 1 taste. And that's just a little walking meditation that you can do to help you begin to observe and notice things. And so I can't wait when we talk next to hear about all the things that you discovered on your nature walk. Big things like trees that you've never noticed before in your neighborhood, or maybe little things like an ant colony or a tiny little bug on a leaf, or maybe a little flower on a weed growing in someone's yard. See if you can notice some things you've never seen before. And then when you come home, if you collected any leaves or twigs or rocks or anything, and you want to, you can incorporate those into your mandala. And your packet has a pattern for your mandala, but you can make your own if you want. It's a series of circles because mandalas are always round. And they are part of Indian and Hindi art. And they are a way to relax. They're always symmetrical. That means that they're always balanced. One side is always the same as the other. Wherever you go in the circle, they're always different, or they're always the same across the circle from each other. Kind of like our Community Allies logo that I've slowly been painting in the back. For every one of the points, there's another one exactly across, like that. And that's sort of like the beginning of a mandala there. And you can use color, You might want to use colored sand or even just regular sand, and you can put some glue down and then drop the sand in the glue and it will stay on the paper, or you can use markers or crayons or paints if you want. Your packet has some examples of how people use some of the things they found on their nature walk in their mandalas. And you might want to put on some calm music while you're doing this. It can be sort of prayerful to reflect and to just be calm while you're drawing your mandala. And then there's also 2 more role models this week, and they're both kids. One was 9 or 10 and one was a teenager, and they both saw environmental problems in their communities and they wanted to see what they could do about it. And there's a girl from Costa Rica, and she wanted to stop offshore drilling because it was going to hurt the reef in the ocean. And so she learned and learned and learned all kinds of things about the reef and the ocean, and she just started sharing all that information. And by sharing it on a blog, she was able to help the oil company and the government not do the drilling. And the boy, he decided to try and save a forest near his house, and he realized that the forest was privately owned. So there wasn't really any lawmaker he could write to. And he knew that the company wouldn't just stop cutting trees down, the company that owned the forest. So he went to the customers of the paper and he asked them to stop using so much paper from virgin forest. That means trees that have never been, the paper that's made from trees that are cut down for the first time. And he was able to convince McDonald's to start using mostly recycled paper in their bags. And so he made a difference by going to the user of the product and getting them to change their behavior. So last week in our call, I asked you guys to look around for a place where you might be able to make a change. And these 2 role models are another 2 examples of how people saw something and did something. And it might not seem so big at first, but it picks up steam. You'll hear from both of them how, as they started to do something, other people joined in with them. So the last thing to think about is, what communities do you belong to? You saw CJ and you saw a couple of his communities. He belonged to the community of his grandma, and he belonged to his church community. He even belonged to the bus community, didn't he? Mr. Dennis, the bus driver, was someone he knows and sees regularly. And then he belongs to the soup kitchen community as well. But I bet he has a bunch of other communities, and I bet you have other communities too. So why don't you think of all the different communities? Start really small, like maybe your smallest community is your siblings or your family that you live with in your house. And then end really big, the whole world. We're all in a community in the whole world. And then think about some of your communities in between. Not just people communities, but think about your environment communities too. Do you live near a creek or some woods or your neighborhood? Who else lives out there in those more wild communities? So that is our lesson for week number 3, sharing our world. And I hope you guys have a great week. And I'm going to send your parents an email, but I'm going to remind you that we are going to talk about this on Zoom a week from today. So Monday, August 10th, we're going to Zoom at 4:30. We're not going to Zoom this Thursday. We're going to Zoom in 1 week from today. So I hope you have a great week, and I can't wait to see and hear all about it. Have fun.